Well, today's episode, I have this. Now, I'm going to try to be very clear, but from my point of view, the normal handheld ones that you can get, this little one that will sit up on a table, terrible. Really, just don't buy it. I tried one once and got all excited about it. Then when I tried to use it, got a bit of an understanding about sewing, I just shook my head and said no. No. Okay. Now this one, I've already opened it and I've had a look at it, so as for first impressions, that ain't going to happen. But I did have a few curiosities, especially with the accessories that came with this thing. One of my concerns is usually consumables. How difficult is it? Is it possible? Yada, yada, yada. What I would think people would normally be concerned about, although I'm usually told by some people to shut up and don't think about it. Fun that. Anyway, I'm going to load some batteries up in this thing and give a quick little demo in case you're just coming in from absolutely nowhere. I'm not going to give a full sort of review on how this works and if you should go out and buy it. It's like, no, I bought this purely as a curiosity, and the voucher I used to get this for, well, $5 less cost me a cent. So that was fun. But the basic premise is that this is a safety switch in case you're not paying attention. That prevents the unit from functioning, whereas if it's not up, it does that. So this allows you to raise and lower the mechanism. So you could actually operate this without having power, which is useful. I'll grab the little here. As you can see, I've used it a couple of times. Whoa! Careful. Make sure it's safe. And so, first off, the sewing machine itself does have a bit of, if you could call it that, it does have a bit of grip. So I was able to pull that through quite easily. And probably one of the more annoying things about it is you can't just unravel it easily. So I'll just... yeah, scissors everywhere. So to begin with, this doesn't produce your standard sort of stitching. This is more like a loop. You don't have a second thread. Usually, a sewing machine would have a bobbin, which is what this is, at the bottom, and then on top you'd have a proper sort of spool, which I don't have on hand to show you. Now, unfortunately, that means that there's like less to it, but fortunately for the user, there's less. Confusing. This, I would say, would be fine at the bare minimum as an emergency backup, but in general, just don't. Just don't. So let's bring about my curiosity with this. So I'm first going to take that off, and if I recall, that should just slip out. Pull out like that. There's the spring. Now, as I was shown on another video, you can do that. I think that's what it's for. But one thing that really bothers me is how difficult is it to get a replacement needle? So this is a spare needle that comes with the machine, and these are some needles I picked up from a shop in town for my own purposes. Now that is something I was worried about. My question is, how do you get a replacement needle for this machine? Because standard needle, the needle from this machine, they're not the same. That's a problem. I dislike that. Consumables are probably one of the things I'm concerned about when it comes to stuff and getting replacements for them. So as you can see, it says 2 extra needles, and it's only got 1 extra needle. So that's a lie out of the box. And for that, I probably won't be able to turn around and say where I got this from, so, you know, bleh. It does come with 2, well, extra bobbins. Now, looking at that, when it says extra, extra means that apart from what's in the machine, there should be additional of, which there isn't. Oh, and the manual. Don't ever lose this if I was you. But then again, that's me, and people don't listen to me, so... Fun! Now that DC jack, which it states on here is 6 volt, 600 milliamp, which... kind of makes sense with the batteries. Anyway, let's try to get this apart. What I should be able to get away with is these 3 screws. Of course, they're self-tappers. What do you expect? There goes the battery. Different screw. Threaded this time. Must be for the handle, or the arm, or whatever you want to call that top bit. Actually, this kind of reminds me of a stapler. Alright, that's out. It's a bit front heavy, so I imagine there's going to be a bit in here. Alright, and we have an electric motor, which that's magnetic. I'm not too happy about the length, that type of wire. There's a DC jack which literally comes off on the batteries, and then it connects through the back there. So alright, without that screw, that's not going to go up and down. Okay. So these 2 screws effectively hold this in place. That's the switch. Wow! Oh man, that is literally just 2 pieces of metal. I mean, this is a stock piece. You can buy that anywhere. These are probably stock as well, which anyone should be able to get a hold of. I am somewhat tempted to take apart this a little more, but there's going to be a lot of grease. What I would like to have seen would be a back tack option. And looking at this, I don't know how I would achieve that. So if I bring this up to the camera and hold it like this, so you can see the needle in there. The needle's tipped. Ooh. Now the feed dogs don't really look like much. In fact, I'm going to take the switch out. So it goes up, and then goes down, goes up, goes down. So the feed dogs in here, if I lift this up, are those sets of teeth there. They're really not much. They're about the same thickness as the rest of the metal. They do have enough pull for like light fabric, but you give a bit of tension, that's going to cause some problems. So if you pull it and don't let the machine feed the fabric through properly, yeah. The spring here, there's an adjustment screw here, so I'm assuming that's for something important. Ah, here we go. So if I bring this up here, In fact, can I take this mechanism out without... No, I can't. I don't feel comfortable. So in there, there's this little hook, and that's going to come forward, grab a hold of the thread, pull it tight, so you're going to have two bits of thread, and that's how it's going to loop it. Should probably have a better diagram, but I don't. And those there are the feed dogs that are in the way, but I really hope... Does that work? Can you? Yeah, you can see the hook. I do actually wonder, can I screw that back in? So, looking at this, I am somewhat concerned that this here, this whole area, is supporting the arm. This is going to fracture easily. Shit. I could just see that snapping like a twig at some point. If you put too much, if the sewing machine has to work too hard. So if I try reassembling this, all right. How do I do this? Whoops. Okay, so that tab, which I was curious about, is actually holding the gear reductions in place. All right. Okay, so that seems to be working. Now, looking at the needle, where you'd usually put the back, which is this sort of angled bit, is at the front of the machine. So that could be useful for someone if they're trying to replace the needle and they don't know what they're doing. Wow, that is a really bad info about this. Okay, that really should be bigger. And the picture on front doesn't help because it doesn't have a populated spool. Alright, looks like I'll have to make use of this hook then. So because the thread has to enter in behind where, well, this technically should be at the front or at the side, well, usually is in a normal sewing machine, it has to go through the back, so you've got this little looper here. So if I can get that in underneath, which I can't. There we go. Got it. I then get this down to the needle and push it through here. Ouch, aroma. Okay, got that through. Good. Alright, now let's see if I can get it on film, this actually working. Because that would be something. So the needle's going down. And that should have hooked, which it did. And the needle's coming up. And then down again. So what I'm going to do is take that fabric. I'm going to lift this up. Stick this in here like so. And then try to manually rotate this. So the needle goes up, and the needle goes down. So if I do the underside, can you see what's going on in there? Doesn't look like it. Alright, now I got it going. Sort of. So. See the hook, the loop, and should go through. Still looped in there, as you can see. Feed dogs are snapping, helping to pull the fabric through. As you can see, this is very tedious. If this handle was a bit better designed, so on this side, yeah, this is actually rather interesting. Usually usually the fabric does this on the inside, loops through, and then the sewing machine pulls it tight. In this case, it's creating a loop at the bottom with just, well, one needle. Now the problem I have is not being able to do a back stitch, which helps reinforce a stitch so it doesn't come undone. It's usually about 3. Sometimes I'll be reckless and do 2. Other times I'll be overexcited and do like 4 or 5. But I don't know if this is going to work on this, so because we can give it a try. Alright, so nothing I seem to be doing is giving it a back stitch. Alright, at which point I just go I've had enough of this. Oh, don't want to drop it. Give it a bit of a drag, which I'd recommend not doing. There. And creating an absolute horrible stitch. So let's try to reassemble it and see if it works properly with normal. Yeah. So the important thing is first off getting this back together properly. Better if that contact was where it's supposed to be, like under there. That almost fell off. Alright, so this bit should sit like this. That's how it should sit apparently. Alright, let's put the battery cover back on. All right. Oh, and I should probably also say something that, in case you're not that smart, Mr. Needle is Mr. Pointy, and Mr. Pointy will go through your finger or any part of your body very easily. So keep Mr. Pointy away from, well, anything that you don't want to get hurt or punch through. So that needle, this thing here, very dangerous. These feed dogs, they don't look very inviting. Ah. All right. So right now, I would like to get rid of that bit of thread. Now, I may have made a bit of an oopsie by not having this all the way through like that, so let's give this a second go, shall we? Now, up. In, down. Some cells back into it. You see that there? And that's what happens when you don't have a proper sort of grip. Yeah. Really, the stitch should be like this, and that's how it's always supposed to be, but unfortunately, that's not always going to happen. So one thing I did forget to do initially was to put this bit of string, the thread through here, through the presser foot, which, so if I set that there, alright, something's off with the tension, because you can see that the size and the loops are, well, these are bigger loops where they're supposed to be smaller. So yeah, I probably screwed this up, something shocking. Boy, nothing like taking something apart and then it not working properly after you put it back together. So yeah, my other major problem with this is that you have to get a fair amount of fabric on there and it doesn't easily move about. So what does it says on here? Stitch, thread stitch, thread handy stitch. No, the thread should follow, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if the tension is too tight. If stitching is too tight, turn the tension. If stitching is too loose, turn it to the right. So it's going to be this thing. So the left and the right if it's too. That's better. Almost. It came undone. So, would this save you in a bit of a pinch, as it claims to do? Probably not. No, if the stitching is going to be that bad, you're better off doing hand stitching, to be honest. At least from my point of view. Sometimes you can actually find used sewing machines for, well, the price of this thing, which is, well, $20 Australian. I mean, well, at least where I am, occasionally I've found them sometimes double the price, $40. A little bit of work and they're generally working, but that's if you know what you're doing, or if you know someone who can actually fix a machine for you and they're willing to do it for free or for a favor. But yeah, this is probably good to play around with, but not something to take seriously. Yeesh. Anyway. This has been my video regarding this machine. Had a few curiosities, got my question answered, especially about the needles. So as soon as you lose needles, well, that's it. You're stuffed. You're kind of out of it. There's no way to get a replacement needle. So you get what you get in the box. Anyway, yibbity yibbida.